As the name suggests, asset repurposing or disposal, you've got to make these decisions. Do you actually keep repairing, renewing, etc., or do you actually maybe repurpose? That asset is no longer fit for purpose for something, so now I'll repurpose it for another group of stakeholders. So we need to decide when assets should be retired, repurposed, recycled, or disposed of. Ideally, that should be done before or well before they became useless. They become damaged, they become non-functional, non-operational. We need to consider the financial, environmental, safety, and social impacts of that decision of how we repurpose. Now, integrating that disposal and repurposing into the life cycle itself, that comes back to that whole coordinated activity, integrated reliability, but also planning from an organisational point of view as early as you can. Typically, organisations wait till the end of the life cycle before they make these decisions. It'd be better, obviously, if during the design phase you could come up with different options in terms of its design life, useful life, and maybe what else it could be used for. We need to ensure compliance with legal, regulatory, and sustainability, but also too planning things like land rehabilitation, minimising waste, and overall our footprint on the earth. Now, one might ask from an asset point of view why there might be emotional and cultural resistance. Having worked in manufacturing myself and seen those that have been in and around a particular machine for 30 or 40 years, it almost feels like it's part of the family and therefore hard to let go, which can create bias, but also to impair good decision making around cost, risk, and performance. So the risk here is that staff or stakeholders feel attached to the asset and they will do anything in their powers to actually keep it going, even at all costs sometimes. So we need to communicate the why, the rationale, safety costs, sustainability, all those things, and highlight the benefits of repurposing, but also bringing that particular person or stakeholders into the fold and get them to explain what we might consider if we are going to repurpose or, of course, dispose, what might we look at next time in terms of improvement. We also run a risk that disposal is seen as just scrap and forget. Put it in the bin, it's over and done with. Let's move on. We need to look at the opportunity for recycling or reuse. If you look at the whole sustainability life cycle, recycling isn't just the only answer. Repurposing is sometimes a better option. We need to promote a culture of stewardship, reminding ourselves why does the asset exist in terms of serving a greater good, not just for the sake of the asset itself, and how sustainability adds to that long-term value. So that sustainability mindset isn't just around the environmental and the social. Sustainability in your organization might be around financial sustainability. And in that, looking at both the internal cost, but also to the external value. Because as we said, there's the value of an asset and value from an asset. And sometimes the two will be quite vastly different. Depending on the context, the environment, the type of asset in particular, there may be stakeholder concerns about the repurposing of an asset or its disposal at the end of the day. We need to look at how that plays out in the minds of our communities, the regulators. Do staff raise objections about disposal? If I'm having done work with mining companies, when they need to look at asset repurposing, they have to actually look at and consider what does it mean for a local community. So engaging stakeholders early, providing transparent information and be willing to listen and hear and understand and co-design what that might look like moving forward by way of mitigating plans. I've seen and witnessed a railway that's no longer required to move people from point A to point B in terms of a train, but that's been repurposed now as a recreational area that brings tourists in and does other or creates other benefit for a township. When an asset gets to the end of its life, sometimes people think, well, that's the end of it. We don't need to worry about any information, data, knowledge transfer. It's gone. But what we often discount that is we don't look at the valuable lessons that we've got from an organisational perspective, don't look at it from a technical perspective, and they're lost when the asset's retired. And it only takes a month or two after an asset leaves and is scrapped or repurposed, people often move on. Done. You've lost that opportunity. So we need to make sure we capture knowledge and data during the decommissioning and for future planning. And even if we think about the life cycle of an asset, it's actually when all of the liabilities of the asset are actually retired, not just the physical asset. When we think about asset repurposing and disposal, certain industries actually have rules around asset utilization and repurposing. So we need to understand, at least from the latter, how does that factor in with business strategy? Because the risk here is disposal decisions are made in isolation, can't just be up to maintenance, or nor should it be, but without considering the broader organisational objectives and maybe the broader organisational asset management objectives. So if we can embed that repurposing and disposal into strategic planning, bring it out in our asset management plans, talk about it in our strategic asset management plan, and even talk about it in terms of lead indicators and asset management objectives in the SAMP, chances are by integrating it back into the business, everyone can be part of the decision, not just waiting till the end of its life. Another reality when we think about the retirement of an asset, whether it's repurposed or disposed, if we think back to an asset is a capability of the organisation, well, in and around that will be people, process, technology, spare parts, etc. So we need to be mindful what that workforce impact might be. Do workers become displaced? Is there no more work for them? Could they be retrained? Could they be repurposed? Could they perform another role completely in the organisation? There is a real risk here that it may reduce jobs or alter or modify roles, which will, in all likelihood, create resistance. Now, around that, we might support affected staff with redeployment, but also retraining, but really a clear transitional planning, because if we can do that for staff, it'll actually support us as we go through that disposal or repurposing, and the organisation will have confidence we know what we're talking about and what we're doing. So from an ISO perspective, it does lead us back into Section 8.1, operational planning and control, including life cycle management. You may go a stretch further and talk about the strategic asset management plan, asset management objectives, risk and opportunity, but the direct correlation would be to Section 8.1. So in summary, asset repurposing or disposal makes sure that assets are retired in a way that is safe, sustainable, and still delivers value. Making the decision to do either up the front of the process wherever possible will indicate that you're a mature organisation, versus allowing an asset to get down into end of life and failure, then you don't really have much choice.